Welcome to Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin. My dear friends, today I'd like to talk about the hot topic of Witkoff's visit to Moscow and the arrangements and deals what may have been made. The title today is What Did Putin Offer to Trump and Is It Acceptable to Ukraine? So let me go in this fashion. I'd like to suggest up front that there was something substantial that Putin may have or offered to Trump. Why is that? This is because the way Trump thinks of Ukraine is a kind of a cost-benefit analysis. What do I gain from Ukraine? What do I lose from Ukraine? And of course, as we all know, if he goes the route of sanctions against Russia's partners, it may, in the view of many economists, harm the United States quite a bit, especially with countries that have a serious trade relationship and deficits with the trade of the United States, China, India, etc. So something must have been offered to Trump that is beneficial, that's something that he may be interested in. And knowing, and I'm sure Putin reckoned with it, knowing that Mr. Trump wants to be a victor, he wants to announce victories and successes, and he wants to be a peacemaker, and he wants to come across that he has this tremendous success that could outshine all the other previous successes and especially get the attention of the Epstein files. This is something that Putin wants to play along. He does want to make a deal with Trump because this is the only chance that he has, because all the other European leaders and the deep state people in the United States don't want any deal. They want to escalate. They want to bring it more and more towards a serious confrontation. Therefore, it seems to me that looking at this meeting, the key words that come through is Putin offered strategic partnership. Now, what does that mean, strategic partnership? Is this probably all kinds of things that he had been talking about for quite some time in terms of joint projects, in terms of investment. In other words, deal with us and you will gain more than by sustaining the war effort of Ukraine, than by signing the rare earth deal with Zelensky, who does not control those rare earth, and we do. In other words, it seems to me that he is ready to do some serious concessions, maybe even territorial ones, in order to achieve a ceasefire and peace deal. Now, why would Putin make concessions when Russian army is moving forward? This is the question that many analysts work. But here's the thing that is not mentioned. And that is that Putin, I'm sure, in his list of things that he expects to receive from the other side is lifting of sanctions, removing all foreign instructors, mercenaries, missiles, stop deliveries of any equipment if there is a ceasefire and if there is down the road a peace treaty. Now, this is also important because something that has not been reported in Western media, and I have checked, it has been reported not only in Russian media, but also now in France press and in Indian sources, and that is that there were British offices seized. And according to another report, one more raid that the Russians did in the last days actually captured 2 Americans in one of the facilities that the Russian commandos stormed. In other words, according to General Sivkov, this also was at the discussion with Witkoff, where the Russian side presented proof that NATO officers were planning and were participating and were doing the targeting, because the Russians seized in Ochakov the documents and the disks and all kinds of other proof that NATO was involved in a direct war with Russia. And obviously, some of this may have been a part of the deal, such as release of these officers or not publishing these documents, etc. But the next thing that Secretary of State Rubio mentioned is that there were discussed security arrangements and territorial question. Now, about the security arrangement, I'm sure what the Ukrainian side and the Europeans are always talking about the threat that Russia will march on if it wins decisively in Ukraine. So what I imagine quite logical is that Putin suggested there is not going to be any Russian advance anywhere, including on the territory of Ukraine if the borders are fixed in a new treaty. And this is what Putin had been pushing for quite some time. And that is to say, security for Ukraine, yes, minus the 4 provinces plus Crimea. In other words, what Putin had been suggesting, and maybe he brought it up again, I'm sure he did, is that there's going to be a new European security pact, a treaty, which would guarantee, with the Russian signature and everybody else's, 2 things: non-expansion of NATO on the one side, and the Russian guarantee of the inviolability of Ukrainian borders, excluding, of course, the 4 provinces that Russia claims and has almost finished up taking. Now, why would Putin agree to ceasefire? One more time. There's 2 reasons, and the one that is most important I'll discuss later. But the first reason is that he wants a deal with Trump. That is his best chance to finish the war and get back to this sort of normal situation with lifting of sanctions, providing security guarantees for Russia, stopping attacks on Russian fleet and export of oil, etc. In other words, for Putin, a long-term arrangement is more important than additional provinces. I doubt very much that he would concede anything from the 4 provinces that Russia considers its own. Even that is some kind of revision is possible, but by far more important for him is a long-term arrangement, and not just promises that the expansion of NATO is not on the table now. Well, it's not now, it could be 10 years from now. What Putin needs is a treaty, and for that treaty, he is probably willing to give some substantial concessions to the Ukrainians. Now, the key question here is the second question in my title, and that is, will that deal be accepted in Ukraine? Because they could make all kinds of deals, and if it is denied by Ukraine, then there's no go. So let's look at the Ukraine political landscape, and that is crucial for understanding whether Zelensky is in the capacity to accept this deal. Now, on the Ukrainian politics, there's an easy division, and that is those that are called irreconcilables. And these are those people who are now in government, and they belong to the Zelensky's party, but he is kind of in the center. There are even more nationalists or more radically anti-Russian nationalists, the Bandera types, and they are the ones who are pretty much controlling the governmental structures in Ukraine since 2014. So the nationalist camp, or the incorrigible or irreconcilable ones, would be Mr. Zaluzhny, former President Poroshenko, Beletsky, who is the leader of the Azov and the nationalist squads, Klitschko, who is the mayor of Kiev, and Budanov, who is the security agency chief. Now, all of these people, I think, will not sign any deal with Putin, which includes the concession on any territories. In other words, these people will not sign anything that contains concessions or loss of what they call Ukrainian territory. Now, if Zelensky signs a peace like this, what I am absolutely certain is that there will be a rebellion. There will be an attempt to remove him from power because that's unacceptable. However, I'm sure that Mr. Trump and his advisors have thought about this, and probably Putin have thought about that too. And in that case, there is rumors in Kiev, and there's a lot of discussions, and now they have turned public about alternatives to Zelensky. And for the first time, we have two politicians in Ukraine that had been silent all along, and all of a sudden they woke up and they started giving political speeches. One of them is Yulia Tymoshenko. She was silent for quite some time, but she's a well-known figure. She used to be a prime minister before Maidan. She's a person of international stature. And all of a sudden, she gave up a speech about the dictatorship of the West. She started blaming the European Union controlling agencies in Ukrainian government. She said, we're not a colony. We will not allow the West to dictate us how to run our country. We're not a banana republic. I think she used some other term, but that is what she meant. In other words, why now? And what does she mean by that? And what's the message? And it seems to be quite plausible and obvious that the message is that she is ready to defend Ukrainian sovereignty. Now, then there's a question. What is more in the eyes of Ukrainian voters? What is more important, to keep Ukrainian sovereignty or to keep or try to fight and win back 4 provinces that are lost? The answer seems to be obvious. It is much better to keep Ukrainian sovereignty from the West, from the Russians, and therefore Tymoshenko is positioning herself, it seems to me, as one of the persons among several who could be ready to sign a deal with Putin and with the Russians, which would mean loss of 4 provinces and security guarantees. Now, another person that spoke in the last week was Anna Skorokhod, and she is a member of the Rada. She's relatively young, and the rumor has it that couldn't be verified that she has some connection to President Trump. She all of a sudden make a sensational speech about 400,000 deserters. And also it was against the war, and it was against the maltreatment of the recruits, and for defense of the teenagers and the young people who are not subject to draft but who could be. In other words, her message is that she wants to be the spokesperson of all those who are now protesting against forced recruitment, what is in Ukrainian called busification, from the term bus, which means when young men are seized in the streets, are thrown into a bus and driven away. And to add a value and voice to her concern, I want to cite something that happened a few days ago, and that is called the Vinnytsia affair. Now, Vinnytsia is a city in central Ukraine, many hundreds of kilometers from the front line, right at the center of the city. And there was something that approaches a riot or a rebellion a few days ago. More interestingly is that I tried to search for pictures in Western media, and there are none, 0. And only in the Russian media I found some. And then the French France Presse, Agence France Presse, confirmed this information. In other words, women started fighting the guards in defense of their men who were driven, captured in the streets and driven to a stadium. And then there was many other men have come, and there was really a battle with the police and the recruitment agencies, and there was a pepper spray and burning cars, and then there was a curfew, and there was a real riot, and then there was one near Nikolaev. In other words, it shows to me that the mood in the country is at the boiling point, that people are tired of the war, they're tired of this conscription, and they want peace. And it seems to me now Anna Skorokhod positioned herself as a person who is ready to defend those people and to protect their voice. Now that brings me to one more politician who voiced his opinions, Medvedchuk, and he is the leader of the Other Ukraine movement. Now, these people are pro-Russian, and the official program is reunification with Russia. So you see, the political spectrum in Ukraine is from those that are haters of Russia and just totally against any deal whatsoever, any agreement, and then there are those that are willing to sign, and there are those who want actually Russian-speaking provinces to reunite with Russia. And now I come to my key point, and that is that if Zelensky refuses to sign, or if he signs and there is a rebellion against him by the nationalist forces who are against any agreement whatsoever with Russia, then Ukraine may be plunged into chaos. And as a result of that chaos, there may come 2 or 3 centers of power. And that would mean that Mr. Putin may have actually thought that that could be the outcome of a peace deal. And in that case, he might get actually more than just 4 provinces. There may actually be 6 or 8 provinces, including Odessa and Kharkov, that would lead to collapse of the Zelensky regime. So this is the situation on the eve of these extremely important talks, and I remain with you. Please subscribe, and I want to remind you I posted 2 videos in personal narratives playlist on my biography, my youth, and how I became a professor. So till next time, goodbye.